So let's kind of talk Egyptian kingdoms, and this is where we're going to cover kind of the history of Egypt, um, not in full detail, just kind of get an idea of again, 'cause we know a lot about the different pharaohs of Egypt, different regions, the different phases of Egyptian history. So just kind of lay them out. Fortunately for us, mostly Egyptian history is divided into the Old, Middle, and New kingdoms. Here we have Old, Middle, New. We'll kind of break those down a little bit, see what's going on in each one. Um, but as you can see, there's almost 2,000, over 2,000, almost 2,500 years of Egyptian history. Overall, in their records, we have about 31 dynasties that ruled. And again, dynasties were pharaonic families. As long as they kept their power together, they would rule father to son typically. But then if the son was a weak ruler, if there were multiple different uh, uh, people from the family vying for power, nieces, nephews, brothers, all of that kind of stuff. A new pharaoh could rise up, claim, that Ra chose him to be king, to be pharaoh, and then they would start their own dynasty onwards and onwards. But we have about 31 of those we've identified through these records, particularly sort of burial records. The earliest phase of this was the unification of Egypt, sort of archaic period, and then the Middle Kingdom or the Old Kingdom. You can kind of see just sort of smaller. Each one gets a little bit bigger. The Middle Kingdom expands out here, and then the New Kingdom, where they expanded. This is when the period of Egypt expansion into other parts of Mesopotamia and the Mediterranean. Again, don't worry, you'll never have to memorize these dates. You can always refer to this slide, just kind of get an idea. But each one are about 500 years long, and just kind of break these down a little bit into regions. It's believed that the Egypt was unified by this sort of archaic period by this guy Menes, who's supposed to believe the first pharaoh. Again, he's written in records that he's debated to rule about 35,000 years ago. This is sort of the mythological ones. The earliest ruler of Egypt that we have a name for is Narmer, earliest recorded ruler. This is this platelet, which was sort of what people would use to put makeup on, these sort of plates that they would use. A lot of them were inscribed. This is supposedly this is the Narmer's name up here, earliest hieroglyphs, and it's supposedly showing Namor defeating different rivals of Egypt, and then people offering him power. He's being bestowed upon this as this sort of god king here. So this is him unifying, establishing this pharaonic order that will then, as we saw, a part of Egyptian society, will maintain for the next 2,000, 2,500 years. You can see the back part of this here. People procession to him. Here's decapitated people he's defeated. These are these mythological creatures that exist in Egypt. So you can kind of see a lot of elements there. But what this plate tells us is there were rulers, these pharaohs bestowed by gods, and earliest hieroglyphs as well, dated to about, I think Narmer's dated to about 2,500 BCE. So this is sort of it's believed that Narmer is the first to unify sort of North and South Egypt, all the way up to the first cataract of Aswan. But then we get into Old Kingdom for about the next 500 years. These new rulers, especially Khufu, Karfe, and Menkaure, pictured here, come up, and this is the age of the pyramids. So this is when you're familiar with Egypt, as pyramids actually took place in the earliest phase of Egyptian society, when the Lower Egypt, again, typically sort of the Nile Delta, is unified with Upper Egypt, Thebes here. So it was unified under Narmer, and these early kingdoms, particularly these pharaohs, kept power here. Here they're depicted there. And here is Giza, where these pyramids were built. And we can kind of talk about the pyramids in general. These are very fascinating. I mean, obviously, a world historically significant, one of the 7 wonders of the world. And again, it's a testament to human ingenuity. I mean, some people said, there's a couple myths. Egyptians were built by aliens. No, I think humans were very as we can see, and actually the technology of the pyramids show us that humans were very capable of building these using geometry and pi and all sorts of things. There's another myth here, a lot of that has been changed over time, that the Egyptian pyramids were built by slaves, and so now we are actually have archaeological evidence to know that that also wasn't the case. In fact, Egyptians, the pyramids they believe they took years and years, up to 20 years to build. Khufu's Great Pyramid pictured here. This is pyramid construct. 20 years, and they think that now that they were skilled craftsmen, that to be able to carve the rocks, to be able to plan this out, to be able to build all of these workshops and ramps and things and technologies were skilled. I mean, obviously it took skilled architects, stonemasons, laborers to do this. We've actually found around now all of the workshops where they live. So what they think now is that in the summer months, after the harvest was done and the Nile was flooded, when they didn't have anything to do, that the early Egyptians would build these pyramids for their king and gods, right? That this was part of ways to, as we will also see when we get into religion, ways to do good deeds in your physical life, so you could go and transfer over into the afterlife. So the pyramids actually reflect how sort of society and culture of Egypt are all interconnected. We have they were paid, they were fed. We have lists of like the provisions given to them. We actually now have found some complaints about the workers. Right, they can't work today. One of the famous ones is that they would get stung by a scorpion. So they couldn't. They got stung by a scorpion. They can't go to work today. So it wasn't like these slaves whipping them to work. People would do this on their own accord. And the way they did this, right, and again, it wasn't magic or aliens. They would build these ramps, and they would, you can kind of see here that they would bring these huge sandstone blocks here to these offloading areas, and they would roll them on wooden logs, and they just pull them up these ramps, and you just go up each ramp as you went around. It would just go up and up and up. And then when they were done, this was actually filled in and then covered with limestone and then capped with a golden top. So, labor was done as a spiritual act, series of ramps and sleds. And again, just kind of Khufu's Great Pyramid here at Giza, the biggest one here, 400 feet tall. It's estimated 20,000 laborers every year would come after they did the rest of their work. They'd all come there 20 years, 2.3 million blocks. Average 2.5 tons. So again, I mean, humans had this technology. They knew what they were doing, and they were able to create these massive structures. But after the old period, they kind of don't build these anymore. So they kind of think too that this was a little bit too much use of resources. Instead, they focus their resources on building more temples and in other places. Particularly in the New Kingdom, which comes out about 240, 2000 to 1600 BCE. This is sort of the classical age of literature, another age of expansion and flourishing, new sets of pharaohs there, a lot of good centralization, bureaucracy, standing army. This is when Karnak and Luxor were built. So now you have this shift to set of pyramids, these huge temple complexes of the gods. So this kind of seen as the sort of classical age of art and literature of Egypt. And then this ends about 1640, this group of Hyksos, who we don't really know who they are. Hyksos just means foreigner in Egyptian. Moved in. They might be the Hittites, because we start seeing in hieroglyphs pictures of chariots, which were very much part of this Hittite world. And then a lot of them are pictured a little bit lighter skinned, which might have been these Indo-European Hittites with bronze weapons. But this kind of demarcates the end of the Middle Kingdom and beginning of the New Kingdom. There's this period of foreign rule that we have, where these foreign rulers, who then actually get assimilated pretty much to being Egyptian, start to rule as sort of the division between the Old and Middle and New Kingdoms. And then the New Kingdom is sort of the height of Egyptian empire, when they are able to conquer much of Nubia, even up into the Levant, parts of Mesopotamia as well. One of the first rulers here is very interesting, this Hatshepsut, She's one of the first female pharaohs. She ruled along with her young son Tutmosis II. She was the wife of Tutmosis II, and their son Tutmosis III took the throne. But she actually ruled kind of on her own. She actually has her own temple in the Valley of the Kings, which is out here by Thebes. She ruled very successful, kind of rejuvenates Egypt, throws off this foreign rule and rules, restores the power there. And then a little bit later, we'll talk about Amenhotep and Akhenaten, who comes up and rules. We'll talk about him specifically a little bit later. He has a very interesting rule. Here he is pictured here. His son is Tutankhamun. So King Tut is the son of Akhenaten. He's interesting because he started a new religion. We'll look at that a little more in depth. And one of the last major rulers of the New Kingdom was Ramses II, which we think this is what he looked like here. This is his mummification in here. He built these huge, he ruled for 66 years, one of the greatest pharaohs in Egyptian history, built numerous temples. This Ramesses temple here is one of the largest temple complexes in all of ancient Egypt. So Old Middle New Kingdoms, that's kind of the history of sort of the political history of Egypt.